Okay, thanks, Kat. So hello, everyone. Thank you for registering and taking part today, especially as the weather's so nice for a change. Hopefully it continues throughout the bank holiday. So this is the second Plastics Network event, and today we're going to focus on plastic packaging. But before we start, just a little bit about the network and sort of the aims of it. Next slide, please. So the aim of the Plastics Network, we're looking to provide opportunities for knowledge transfer and networking for businesses within the plastic supply chain. It's a free network, and also we're looking at training, upskilling, and also professional development. And the Polymer Training and Innovation Centre in Telford, which is part of the Wolverhampton College, are also involved in the Plastic Network. So this is a really important part of it. So we're also looking to exchange industry experience, and using this Remo platform means that everybody has an opportunity to sort of talk to the other participants. So we're developing this business support network for companies across the plastic supply chain, predominantly Shropshire, Telford and Wrekin and the Black Country. But there are lots of participants from outside those regions, and everybody's welcome to take part. So if you're from outside of those areas, thank you for coming along as well. So today we're focusing on plastics packaging. Next slide, please. Oh, there we go. So, like I say, we're talking about plastic packaging, and one of the main drivers for the industry at the moment is the new plastic packaging tax. And in fact, it takes effect from 1 year tomorrow, so from the 1st of April 2022. And the aim of it is to reduce the use of fossil fuel derived plastic feedstock. So the aim really is that all plastic packaging that's manufactured in or imported into the UK containing less than 30% recycled plastic will be taxable. And this is at the moment £200 per tonne. And it's anticipated that this rate will increase in the future as the strategy develops. So there are some exemptions, and this includes plastic packaging that's used as transport packaging to import products into the UK. So from April 2022, businesses, they'll no longer have a choice. You either need to invest in recycled plastics or you pay the tax. And this obviously causes a number of practical challenges for businesses. And this is an area that we get asked about a lot at the moment. So at Pierce Partnerships, the sort of company that I run with my business partner, who you'll hear from later, we get asked a lot of questions about recycled content and plastic. So I've put together sort of the 5 main questions that we're asked at the moment. And so I'll just run through those. So next slide, please. So number 1, will the safety of my product be affected? So not every type of recycled material works for every application. And there's a number of regulations that influence the inclusion of recycled content into products. So things like food contact, healthcare, and also cosmetic. And at the moment, there is a myriad of regulations, legislation, technical requirements, but you also have your customer requirements, and there's also sort of consumer requirements to consider when you're introducing or increasing the amount of recycled plastic in your products or packaging. Next slide, please. Will it affect the durability of my product? So adding recycled materials, it may reduce the product's durability. And in some cases, this reduction can't be tolerated. And in some cases, it can be tolerated, but you might also need to have a sort of a redesign. But the amount of recycler added, the variability, and also the purity of the material needs to be considered when you're sort of looking at and anticipating the impact on your product performance. So a really good starting point is a technical risk assessment. And this risk assessment is to look at the product's required performance, but you also need to look at the possible reasons for failure. Next slide, please. Will it affect my manufacturing process? So the use of recycled material in place of virgin, it can reduce the overall carbon footprint of a product by up to 40%. But that's not going to be every product, and there's lots of variables involved, but replacing the material, it can help to reduce your overall carbon footprint. But it can also have an impact on other things. So things like your operating parameters, so cycle time, temperature, pressure, processing consistency. And you might also need to consider things like ancillary equipment, so things for mixing and dosing recyclate, but also assess, is there any transportation or load storage implications? Next slide, please. What about the quality of the recycled material? So sourcing a steady supply of appropriate quality recyclate, it can be a challenge. And again, it depends on lots of factors. So things like contamination level, its form, but also its consistent availability. And particularly as brands and consumers are increasing their demand for recycled material, it's really important that you evaluate and understand your supplier, but also their supply chains, and that you have your appropriate quality agreements in place. So you need to be sure that you have a really good understanding of whether the material supplied meets your product specifications. Next slide. And then the question I think we probably get asked the most is, how much recycled content should I add or can I add? And again, it depends. Like a lot of these answers, it depends on the application, it depends on the requirements of your product. But if it's for packaging and you want to avoid the tax, then it needs to be at least 30%. So carry out an assessment of the potential impact on the performance properties of the product. This includes sort of the quality of the recyclate, the match of the recycled plastic to the currently used material, and also its effect on mechanical and other critical properties, such as appearance and also colour, if that's also important in your product. So assessing the risks that are associated with your products and processes is the first step in evaluating the amount of recycled content to include. So those are the 5 main questions we get asked at the moment. And so a lot of it, the answer is always, it depends. It depends on application, it depends on your requirements, it depends on the sort of industry. Next slide, please. So hopefully some of this will become, you'll get a lot more information. Paul Shipton, my colleague at PS Partnerships, he's going to give an overview of the plastics packaging challenge. And then we're really pleased that Fraser from Waddington, Europe, is going to give a sort of case study about easy and end of life for plastic packaging. So Waddington, Europe, they're pioneers in food packaging and protection. And they're really pushing themselves to improve the plastic circular economy. Then this will be followed by Jane Yardley from Cress, who Cress are one of the plastics network supporters and help sort of develop the network. And then there'll be time for questions and plenty of time for networking using the Remo platform. So I'll now hand over to Paul, who will give us a sort of a presentation on plastic packaging, the challenges. Thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne, and hello everybody. Welcome to today's presentation. I'm going to talk about plastics packaging and the challenge. And I might be a bit controversial. I've got some certain ideas and views, so I'll be interested to see what people think. And any questions and answers will be great. Any questions will be gratefully be approached later on in the session. So I'm going to talk about the challenge. Next slide, please, Kat. So I'm going to give bit more about the background of plastics packaging, what the status is as far as recycling, how much do we recycle at the moment, where the pollution, where sources of pollution comes from. I'm going to home in especially about marine pollution and give you some facts and backgrounds to that in relation to plastics packaging. And then thirdly, those 2 bits might sound a bit gloomy. The third bit is what can we do and what can be our positive contribution to the overall position with improving the environmental impact of plastics packaging. Next slide, please, Kat. So here's some of the challenges we're currently facing in the industry, which we'll come across in providing our support to companies. The first problem we've got really is the plastics recycling industry, and there are a few exceptions, but overall has a low level of investment. It's been neglected. The industry itself has seen a great deal of returns, and we're particularly for the food contact grade materials, certain levels of quality and control required for recycling into the food contact grade materials, that investment hasn't been there. So we're starting really at a low level to address it. And as Suzanne's already mentioned, this packaging tax is going to come in. So lots of packaging manufacturers are going to find themselves in a bit of a hard place, really, because there won't be enough, possibly, plastics materials that are recycled to put into packaging. The next challenge really is that the cost of virgin raw materials will stay flat. I know at the moment a lot of manufacturers are struggling because because of supply and demand, the cost of virgin raw materials has gone up significantly. People are fighting over supplies, and that's more of a supply and demand situation. But really, the cost of the raw materials to make the raw materials, if you like, the sort of C4 carbons, naphtha, those sort of materials, is actually reducing. Okay, there's more fracked C4 carbons out there to make polyolefins from. So although we're seeing a disruption in the supply chain at the moment for supply and demand, we see that the virgin materials will remain flat, and therefore the cost of recycled materials won't be competitive with them. There are currently few opportunities for recycling plastics other than materials like PET, polyethylene terephthalate, polypropylene, polyethylene. Some people, and we've got Carrie Evans today here from Plastcycle in Shrewsbury, he's very much involved in look at other materials like polystyrenes, sometimes non-packaging materials. But for the actual recycling industry for packaging, those materials, PET is a great success story, but polyethylene and polypropylene really are the ones that are used, and there's not many opportunities outside those. The knowledge of people in the plastics packaging packaging industry is pretty limited. People are pretty risk averse. They're not understanding how the supply chain works. There's really kind of almost a different language between the plastics recyclers and the people that are actually processing polymers for plastics packaging. That's a real gap which we see needs to be corrected and addressed. There's confusion and mistrust by the public. I think there's been lots of television programs on about what is a recyclable material or product and what is recycled. And that's another concern which we need to address because we don't want to lose the trust. The industry doesn't want to lose the trust in the public, and we have to be honest and open about what capabilities of our packaging is. The last point really is the increasing tendency really for, certainly in the UK, councils wanting to incinerate. And that's a worry, because if they're incinerating post-consumer plastics packaging, we can't put it back in the recycle chain. And it's quite a bit of recent publicity that councils, and you'll see them going on about recently in the press and in the television about councils investing in great big incinerators. You can see them from motorways sometimes, to actually incinerate all waste, not just recycled waste, but all kind of waste. Household packaging would go to landfill in the incineration process, which is a real waste of resources and a loss to the recycling industry. Next slide, please, Kat. So a little bit about the global plastics packaging industry and who's using it where. And this is a table from 2019, which shows the kind of overall packaging waste being produced by different parts of the world and the actual plastic packaging waste being produced per person. And you can see there really the US is about 50% higher than anybody else. So they're actually consuming a lot of packaging waste. China and the UK and Europe are about on level par. Japan's a bit higher. You find more packaging being used in Japan. And you can see there in India at the moment, and some of the developed countries like India really are not using much packaging waste, and their total packaging waste per person is pretty low. So at the moment, you can see that where the actual packaging waste is being generated and where post-consumer materials are starting to pile up. And a lot about us managing plastic waste is the infrastructure, how it can be dealt with, how it can be recycled, or at least not leak into the environment. But what it tells us is really that some of the big areas of population and growth which haven't actually not using the total amount of plastic waste, the potential in those areas is huge. And so those are the ones we need to look out for and come up with good ideals for managing our packaging waste. Next slide, please, Kat. So at the moment, these are the best numbers I can get at the moment. This is some work maybe a couple of years ago now, but look to see where the global packaging waste is going. And I think it has improved slightly from there, but generally gives an overall picture. You can see there that overall in the world, about 40% of packaging waste is actually landfilled. There's leakage of 20%, incinerated about 12%, and we're certainly in the UK now, we're seeing about, I think, 10 to 14% of our packaging being incinerated, and that's increasing, as I mentioned earlier on, as councils invest in incineration. Only around about 14% is recycled, and of that, around 10% is effectively recycled, really, or cycled into lower value products, and another 4% is lost in the process. So you can see there, really, we're not doing a very good job as far as recycling packaging waste in the world. Only about 10% really is effectively being recycled, even though, in theory, a huge percentage of it could be recycled. Next slide, please, Kat. So one of the consequences, obviously, if leakage of plastics packaging waste is into the ocean environment, and there's lots of publicity about that at the moment, lots of media interest. And then we see, really, when it goes into the environment, into the oceans, we see the situation where it may go in as a large piece of packaging, but then end up as a microplastic on the top right hand side there, microplastic, which exists in the oceans for many years. Microplastic is really when the actual packaging waste breaks down to less than 5 millimeters and smaller, and that can consist of all different types of plastic in the ocean. Some of it can be got back out of, a lot of it cannot be, and it's left there, and usually ends up, if it's dense enough, on the seabed. Next slide, please, Kat. So where are the oceans putting this packaging waste out into the oceans? Well, studies have shown, really, that most of the actual waste that goes into the ocean is from Asia. You can see there that US and Europe only a very small percentage of the actual packaging waste getting into the oceans, and the most packaging waste is going out, really, around a number of different oceans in China. Now, we can't be too smug on this, because a lot of people do know that for a long time our packaging waste was sent out to China, was sent out to Asia for use, for recycling or for disposal. Instead of landfilling it, the councils found it much cheaper to put it on a boat that was, instead of going back with seawater in its bulkheads, to put plastics waste in the bulkheads and return it back over to Asia. So although they're contributors, being major contributors to marine pollution, it may not be their waste, it may be our waste. So we need to bear that in mind. But again, this slide shows that, really the issue is from Asia and increasingly Africa. The waste not coming out from Europe, but they're having to deal not only with their own waste, but a lot of ours. And that actual area now has been cut off as far as getting packaging waste out now into China. China aren't accept it anymore, but there are still packaging waste being sent out to places like Turkey, who have to sort of develop techniques to try to manage it and dispose of it. So that's the overall picture. So although we're very low in Europe and the USA, we're still responsible for a lot of the waste that goes into the oceans. Next slide, please, Kat. There's a number of industry initiatives, and one of the points that we want to do in the network is let people know about the initiatives and really benefit from them, because a lot of these initiatives are free and very helpful, and there's a lot of knowledge out there how we can go about protecting the environment from plastics. One of the ones which Suzanne and myself are very much involved in is Operation Clean Sweep, which is an initiative to prevent plastics granules and dust and powder getting into the environment, especially the marine environment. I think Adela might be here from BPF if you can. She should be in the room today. And she's from BPF. BPF is sponsoring Operation Clean Sweep for the UK. I know Waddington's, where Fraser Graham's come. They're actually participate in this Operation Clean Sweep, and there's a new standard coming out, what's called a publicly available standard, a PAS 510, which Suzanne and myself are technically authoring, which will be a standard to help companies really get moving and raise the standard of how to manage plastic pellets and dusts. And we're hoping that's going to become a standard which will be adopted across Europe in various different guises. So that's out there. But stopping plastics pellets from packaging processes getting into the environment is an important thing. There are also another number of different types of initiatives. There's Recycle Class, which is out there, which is a way of actually helping with design and providing companies to assess their design process. And also there's another one, HPRC, which is an initiative to help companies really in plastics products and packaging healthcare, which is another source of where we're getting plastic waste to be managed with. Next slide, please. Kat. Right, so what can we do is actually in actually supporting plastic sustainability in packaging. So what we've got to do then really is we need to pool knowledge, engage industry activities, and plastics designing will be a key. So smarter design, smarter ways of doing things will be a key. We've seen there the overall packaging, how the packaging is coming from and how packaging is being used in different parts of the world. So we need to think globally. It's not just a European issue, or it's an issue which across the world. So solutions have to be global solutions, not too complex, that can't be developed and used in other countries. We need to look for recycling opportunities and use of recycled materials. We need to stop, that's an important thing where we can. Stop plastic pellets and dust getting into the environment. And we need to demonstrate that plastics packaging sustainability initiatives to a broad audience. So we need to be credible as an industry and work together with the industry and with the supply chain. Certainly inform the consumer and be honest. Consumers always prove to be a lot smarter than people give them credit to. So we need to be honest and open about what kind of packaging we can offer and what the packaging, how the packaging life cycle works. And I think also the other thing really we need to do is start to challenge incineration. We don't want a lag in the recycling industry to actually get behind, and then therefore the incineration sort of technology start to take over, and we miss the opportunity really for recycling plastics. Next slide, please. Kat. So PS partnerships offer a number of different services to help companies with their environmental impact on polymers. One of the things we're doing at the moment with Polymer Training and Innovation Centre is offering training courses, and we offer training courses at all different levels, from entry level courses, people to raise awareness of plastics in the environment, right through to development of people, and really helping the supply chain, helping buyers, and putting together environmental strategies around plastics. So those are things we offer as part of our services. Next slide, please, Kat. PS partnerships and consultancy, what we do is we offer independent support. Plastic sustainability is part of what we do. We also offer support in plastics as far as things like failure diagnosis, material selection, and expert witness. We're active in helping companies with their management systems, especially around environmental impact. So that could be 14001, helping companies implement 14001 and manage their impact and aspects. And we've got a particularly being interested in the pharmaceutical industry, because that's an area, because of legislation, is becoming more and more important, how people manage pharmaceutical products and their end of life management. So that's something we can offer and support companies with. So please get in touch. Next slide, Kat, which is the last one. So that's what we look like, and please get in touch if we can help at all. That'd be good. Next speaker is going to be Fraser Graham from Waddington's Europe. As Suzanne said already, I think Fraser is a member of this company, and they're innovators in food packaging and in plastics recycled packaging. So thanks very much, Fraser, for coming along. I'll hand over to him. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Paul. Much appreciated. Lots of good insight there. Thanks for laying the groundwork for the piece that I'm about to share here. I'd like to just take a few minutes maybe just to understand the reason for this part of the discussion. What we've seen in our market, and Waddington Europe is a converter, so we take the pellet, we form, and we produce the packaging. We've seen a market shift driven mainly from what you were referencing in terms of what the consumers are influenced by. So Blue Planet, war on plastics, and then coupling all of that together with what's happening in legislation for the plastic tax. It's causing the brands and the packer fillers to look around and see what other options there are for their products. So in our neck of the woods, in packaging, that's food packaging, there are restrictions that Suzanne went through earlier. Direct food contact is a key concern, where the packaging must still remain safe for the consumer to eat the food from it, or directly drink from it. That's the key criteria in any of the developments that we're doing. So when we talk about plastic tax coming in, adding in cost into the packaging, if it does not contain recycled content, that's the big market shift. That's the big driver for our customers, Waddington Europe's customers, to come to us and ask the questions of, okay, put me 30% recycled content into my packaging, please. And in the beginning, when this sort of tidal wave kicked off, maybe a couple of years ago now, the question was around, okay, what is the most readily available food contact, let's say circular polymer, that I can use for my packaging? What's my options? And PET bottle grade, Recyclast grade A is the number one. That's the biggest commodity product. It's tracked on an index, so you can build a business model around a food grade PET, because you can track it against virgin, you can put contracts against it, you can put capital against it, you can build a business around it. So the immediate question is, okay, put all my products into PET, please. And that's where the sticky discussion starts. PET certainly has all benefits of clarity. So this is a typical thermoformed PET product. I had my breakfast out of this morning, so it is safe. I'm still here. This was an almond croissant, and it's used in Tesco's bakery section because it's very, very clear. It shows the product very well. And that's what PET does well. Thank you, Kat. That's what PET does well. So it's basic in its design because it has to be thermoformed. When you try to injection mold a PET product and make it lightweight, so not adding to the bigger plastics weight tonnage issue, then there are issues to be able to inject correctly to get the flow length without it crystallizing in the flow path. So that's why generally PET products are formed and then stretched. So in the thermoform world, we make sheet and then we press it out into a different shape. So plus of that is it's nice and clear. So this was actually made of pots, tubs and trays from the UK market. So that's one of the key areas that PET is good at. We as a consumer are able to throw this into our blue bin, which blue bin where I come from. We have a partner, a recycling partner, who's able to do the curbside collection. They can fraction off pots, tubs and trays from that fraction, and we can buy that back as Waddington Europe as pots, tubs, trays, because that's where we contribute to the problem. So the intention there is, from a mass balance perspective, we put 10 tons of pots, tubs, tray, PET, clear, into the curbside waste stream, and we can then buy it back out. So there's lots of pluses for PET. There's lots of minuses as well. Functionality of a thermoform product is traditionally very basic. And in going back to that question and that market shift of our customer, who's the brand or who's the packer filler, saying, right, get me into PET because I can do my plastic tax compliance and all of these other benefits. But I want it to be tamper evident. So this is usually first port of call. If they're moving out of a polypropylene or a polystyrene product, those products can be made so that the features are accurate enough to give the consumer the added benefit of tamper evidence. So you have to break something, you have to open something, you have to do an action to get into the pack so that you know that the food inside is still safe. So that's first port of call for us. So we've taken PET thermoforming, very basic concept, and we've developed patented technology to be able to break a feature to gain access to the lid, to gain access to the product. So this is the first tick in the box. So by doing that, the consumer is still able to get their recycled content in. The packer filler, it doesn't have a problem in terms of applying lid. You know, there's no extra mechanics there. And we're ticking the food safety box. Lots of ticks starting to happen. And, you know, you still get your clear material on the outside. The main challenge that we want to make sure that we are contributing to is the infrastructure of the PET in the UK. So by producing a clear PET product which contains rPET, we want to make sure that there's no contamination, no glue, no ink, no wax, no PE laminate on there, that when it goes into the recycled stream, it can be, you know, because we're going to buy it back. So we want to build that infrastructure. For every ton that we put in, we want to be able to buy it back. So we're at the stage with the customer to say, okay, you can have your 30% PCR, you can have your tamper evidence. Decoration. How do we do decoration without ruining the end of life? And this was the title of the short presentation, Easy and Obvious End of Life for Plastic Packaging. So what we've been doing is partnering up with a carton board manufacturer to get the benefits of cardboard and plastic in the same breath. Traditionally with cardboard, if you want water resistance, you have to put a PE liner in there. So you're going to ruin the cardboard recycling stream. Now that there are allowable limits of contamination in both of these areas. You can put 10% of contaminant onto cardboard, you can put 5% into PET. Longer game is that those percentages are going to start to come down. So we're trying to future-proof our product range so that a investment on the packer filler, on the brand side, is future-proofed. So we don't want to add any contamination into the cardboard. This is a well-trodden, well-understood recycling stream and a valuable waste product, same as this. PET is a valuable waste stream, providing it's clear. This one is recyclers grade A. As soon as we start to put ink, wax, lacquers, P's on here, we start to downgrade the end recycler, and that's the problem. So by applying the carton board onto the plastic, we get the tamper evidence, we get the resealable, we get the PET. We can take weight out of this. So again, it's in line with the reduction in weight targets, you know, from the plastic pact and those sorts of things, by using the strength of the cardboard. So this one was an early prototype. The postman hasn't delivered my new one, but in doing that, we are only clipping on. This is a mechanical clip-on process. So there are products in the market at the moment that do ultrasonic welding to weld the PE layer of the internal to the PET, and that gives you a nice bond. There are wax applications where it's fully bonded. We want to make it so that at the end of life, when the consumer has eaten their sausage rolls, eaten their biscuits from this container, that yes, the consumer could remove it and put that in the cardboard, put that in the plastic. Or when that arrives into a MRF, it is crushed or when it's even in the bale, it's crushed and the two will just separate on their own. This goes into one recycling stream and this into the other. So we retain the value of both of these sort of commodity items in the waste infrastructure. And that seems to be very popular. Certainly the customers that we're talking to at the moment, when we're saying this is an alternative to traditional thermoformed PET, ticking all these boxes, it does seem to be a good route. The stage that we're at the moment is to just classify this in terms of its global warming potential, carbon footprint, to make sure that we are doing this right. So we're making sure, let's say this is entered into the market, 200 million units, and we're replacing cardboard, or we're replacing tin or glass, or even like a different polymer, like polypropylene or something like that. Are we making a difference from a long game point of view, reducing the amount of carbon per functional unit? So you might put 200 grams of sausages in this. What's the best way to move that sausage meat, that food portion? So that's the stage that we're at, to put some peer-reviewed carbon data behind that, and then that just feeds the story into our customers. I think that's everything. Yeah, that's everything I had on that one. So yeah, any questions in the Q&A, and we cover them at the end. Thank you very much for having me. Over to you, Jane. I think you need to switch your mic on, but over to you.
Thank you. Thanks for that. So, yeah, thank you very much, Fraser. That was very interesting to see how the insights of changing consumer demands are influencing your innovation processes, and also looking at the circular economy and having to assess that life cycle of the product to see whether it is actually making that shift. So thank you, very interesting. I just wanted to say as well, thank you. Fraser's here for questions afterwards. So we've got a Q&A button. I can see some people have started to put questions in there, so that's great. If you've got any questions, do put them in the Q&A function. Kat, can I have my slides, please? Thank you. So I'm Jane Yardley. I'm at Cress. So we're one of the partners in the business network, the Plastics Network, and we are the Centre for Research into Environmental Science and Technology. So we're a free business support funded programme by ERDF, and we help businesses innovate and bring new products and services to the marketplace. Next slide, please. So the three real main areas that we work in are business support. So we can start really working with very early on businesses who might be looking at market research, or established businesses who are looking at a new product or service, helping with business models. Again, the business networks such as this one. We also run a water one and a geospatial information network. So really getting businesses together to share best practice and ideas. We can help businesses look at their supply chains and do a competitor analysis. The next area working really is that product development and service. So whether you're right at the very start, concept stage, or you're near to market, we can help. And that might be looking at product trials, accessing finance, looking at feasibility studies, and also later on in that process of meeting buyers and building collaborations for the work. And then really the support comes in, and it's free. Is that you can access our academics, so that's the University of Chester and our partners at the University of Birmingham in the ARLI and Ateta programme, so looking at materials as well there, and energy uses in your processes. Laboratory testing can be carried out free of charge, life cycle assessments I've just mentioned, and also modelling of your systems. Next slide, please, Kat. So really what our benefits are, why work with this and why engage with these programs. And this is what the businesses have said, that we basically save the businesses time and money. We're an extra pair of hands for that business. We can explore new markets and introductions to buyers and suppliers. And again, like I've just said, access our facilities and really help bring those products to market, whether that is a final push over the line or whether that is in the far more development and proof of concept stage. Next slide, please, Kat. That's really just a rattle through what we do. Just to say we're here. I'm on the table that's marked cress. So if you want to come and have a chat with us and see how we can support you. So again, very happy to talk whether you're really just at the idea stage or much further down the R&D process. If we can't help you, we've got other support programs in the area we can help signpost to you. We've got a couple here today. We've got Ian from Solved and we've got Mike from Amcash, and Steve's here as well from the Polymer Training and Innovation Centre. So we're all here to come and have a chat to and see how we can help you. While we've still got this European money, it's well worth taking advantage of it. Okay, thanks, Kat. That's it. I'll leave it to networking now.
Thanks, Jane. It's a very quick rustle through. Just before we close, we'll do some Q&As. So if the speakers could join me back on stage, they could turn their cameras and mics back on. Paul's back. Brilliant. Suzanne's back. Fraser, hopefully, is still here. Yeah. Excellent.
Hello.
Great.
Hi.
So we've got a few questions. There's only one, which I'm not sure if anyone will know the answer, but it might be a general question. Someone's just put, mentioning Tesco, which I think Fraser mentioned. Does anyone know who they are using to recycle their soft plastic packaging? They now collect fruit and veg bags and other non-pet for packaging in all their stores across the southwest. I don't know if anyone knows who they're using.
No, sorry.
No, she did.
I know. No.
If anybody
Sorry,
does,
that's not a bad question.
It is getting more common though. Certainly the flexibles end is the troublesome end of recycling, just because of the very nature of how light it is and how difficult it is to put through a chipping process. So it is getting a lot more investment and focus. There's a lot of recyclers doing it, certainly, but I don't know who specifically.
Great. There's another question actually, Fraser, that links to the weight. And someone's put, are they right in saying that in order to recycle a pet product, it will need to be nice and heavy in order to be properly recycled, or does the density of the material not matter?
Yeah, I mean, heavy doesn't really come into it from a, let's say, gauge thickness or actual weight of products. Density is critical in the recycling process, but that's inherent to the type of polymer. So in the sink float process, how you separate PET from polypropylene, one sinks, one floats, and then they can siphon off those fractions. But providing it can be detected, and there's various ways of detecting different plastics. So near infrared is one of the examples. When black was on the hit list from every retailer, black absorbs near infrared, so you weren't able to detect one fraction from another. But providing you're able to offer to any sorting facility a clear of any contamination or too much, let's say, decoration, like the example that I showed before, if that was to go down a recycling stream with the carton board still on, then it would be identified as cardboard and the PET would be fractioned out in that stream. You have to be able to see the whole thing for the specific polymer or cardboard that you want to get back out.
Thank you. Paul, I think this question came through when you were talking, so I think it's for you. Someone's asked, are biodegradable packaging products to be included in the tax?
Well, that's a really tricky one at the moment. And the legislators are struggling to explain why they put the Single-Use Plastics Directive regulations through already. So the whole gear, and I've been to meetings with the government and UK government on this, about deciding on how they're going to prioritise this. The whole view really is that on recycling. The biodegradable materials don't really fit very well in any legislation around this. It's a bit of a surprise, really. So biodegradable materials can be a bit of a problem because they get in the recycling stream, they can contaminate recyclable materials, and that's really a concern overall for that. So it's a real dilemma for the industry what to do. route or recycling route, and generally the overall view at the moment is that it should be going really in the recycling route. We're yet to see some of the implications on biodegradable materials, and initiatives have been taking place with that, but at the moment the legislation does not recognise them, and they certainly ruled out some materials which when you add certain additives to them, they actually spontaneously kind of break down into CO2 and water, which is kind of the metal catalyzed degradation mediums. They've certainly tried to argue that they should be used, and they tend to be used in certain countries where there's no recycling infrastructure. But the overall gear of regulation seems to be that of recycling, having a recycling infrastructure. So biodegradable materials aren't functioning very well in legislation and in the market at the moment.
Okay. Thanks, Paul. I'll just tick that one off. Another question for Fraser. What will happen to the PSL label and adhesive in the recycling of your PET tray?
That one, I assume.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The sensitive label. So that'll come off in the hot wash process because the adhesive is water based. It's water soluble. So there's within the recycling process that's dealt with. It's understood. If it was completely covered and every piece of PET was completely covered, it's a problem. Whilst it's a very low percentage of the weight, it's manageable.
Okay, cool.
And that's an important point, that these, as Fraser said, these adhesives now are designed to sort of melt, but at below 60 degrees C. So you put them in a hot wash, as long as you've got a hot water temperature above 60 degrees C, they spontaneously come off and they dissolve. And they wash it's water soluble, so they wash the adhesive away as well into the water.
Yeah. Yes, that makes sense. Thank you. There's another one for Fraser. rPET. Why are Coca-Cola using rPET from Europe? Is there a lack of rPET in the UK?
There is a short answer for that. Yeah. Yes. Yes, there is a lack. There is a lack. But I think that this is supposedly, and I'm trying to remain positive about it, that the purpose of the plastic tax is to pull a revenue stream that will allow an infrastructure to be built in the UK that will increase the amount of available rPET on our shores, and we don't have to go to Europe for it. I've seen different studies that say we are short of infrastructure by half to be able to achieve 30% in every plastic product. So short answer, yes, there is a lack of rPET in the UK, but there's a lack of all recycler in the UK. The infrastructure is only just started to be promoted and legislated against, and the funding is available. But yeah, Innovate UK and some of the EU grant funds that are available, businesses are starting to pull on those and break ground. And I think that's the next question down. The new high stream recycling facility that is being built, how will it affect you? It's brilliant. Yeah. The more infrastructure we can put in to the UK, the more we as a converter will be challenged to make the products more recyclable, and the circle just keeps going round.
I think it's as Fraser says, amazing success story. PET, polyethylene terephthalate, there's not enough round for it. It's clever, the technologies are good. As we've seen from Fraser, the food contact properties are acceptable. I think that's a real success. And what we've got to do next is make a similar success story for polyethylene and polypropylene and polystyrene, all the other products. And I think we can learn a lot from what's happened in PET. PET is easy to separate from polypropylene and those other materials, but a great success story which people are navigating very well.
Which is good. That's great. Thank you very much. That is all the questions. Just double checking there's no one's put anything in the chat. No, they haven't. So that's all the questions.
Okay.
Suzanne.
Yeah, no, just sort of to say thank you to everyone for coming along. There is an opportunity